Good morning. On behalf of the Crime Victims Alliance of Pennsylvania, also known as CVAP, I would like to welcome everyone to the 24th Annual Statewide Crime Victims' Rights Rally. My name is Monica Iskrick, and I'm chair of the Crime Victims' Rights Committee of CVAP. CVAP was established in 2011 to create a forum for crime victims, survivors, advocates, activists, and their allies. As an all-volunteer statewide coalition, CVAP works collectively to ensure that victims of all crimes are addressed in the Commonwealth. We invite you to learn more about CVAP by visiting their table over here to my left. This year's theme, Serving Victims, Restoring Trust, and Building Hope. Thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join together here for this event, and in all the ways you recognize Crime Victims' Rights Week. Crime Victims' Rights Week is celebrated locally and nationally the entire week of April 10th through the 16th. I want to make everyone aware that Keystone Crisis Intervention Team, also known as KKIT, are present today. KKIT has provided a team of trained volunteers to support those who may benefit from a compassionate presence. KKIT responders, will you please stand? You are able to pick them out by the white ribbons they are wearing. I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has made this event possible. Chair of the Crime Victims Alliance of Pennsylvania Committee, Carol Lavery. Carol, can you please stand? And the entire rally committee for their hard work and dedication over this past year. Would the rally members please stand? This day would not be possible without all your hard work and dedication. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Jennifer Storm. Ms. Jennifer Storm was nominated by Governor Tom Corbett as Commonwealth Victim Advocate on November 8th, 2013. She was confirmed by the Senate on December 10th, 2013 to serve a 6-year term. Ms. Storm is responsible for advocating the interests of adult and juvenile crime victims throughout Pennsylvania. Prior to her appointment, Ms. Storm served for 10.5 years as Executive Director of the Dauphin County Victim Witness Assistant Program, a nonprofit organization which provides direct services to victims of crime, community outreach and training in the victims' rights and in crisis response services. She is the author of several books and magazine articles. Ms. Storm has received numerous awards for telling of her personal story of victimization, addiction, and recovery. Ms. Storm currently serves on the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, Victim Services Advisory Committee, Pennsylvania Commission on Sentencing, Crime Victims Alliance of Pennsylvania, the State Council for Interstate Compact on Juvenile and Adult Offenders, and chairs the Pennsylvania Task Force on Restitution. The Honorable Jennifer Storm.
And I'm shorter. Thank you very much, Monica. Clearly, I attend a lot of meetings. I want to thank CVAP for putting on another fantastic rally. I would like to acknowledge some of the dignitaries that we have with us in the audience today. Delilah Rumberg, the CEO of PCAR, is with us. Peg Durkers, the CEO of the Pennsylvania Commission on Domestic Violence. There we go. Linda Rosenberg and Kathy Buckley from the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. Representative Mike Ver, and I believe Representative Mert is with us as well. I do apologize if I missed anyone. Can I get a huge round of applause for all of these amazing, strong survivors and allies behind me? And also the amazing survivors that are out there that haven't quite yet made it to these steps. You're going to get there, and we know we'll see you there in future years. As Monica stated, I am the victim advocate for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and it is my distinct duty to represent over 40,000 crime victims within the Commonwealth. If you would like to learn a little bit more about the Office of Victim Advocate, we have 2 booths over here and our amazing staff. Can I have my staff raise our hands? If you would like to learn more about our services, please feel free to stop by. And as I looked over there, I noticed that I missed Rich Long, who's the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association. Sorry about that. So you got a special shout out. I do come with my apologies from the Governor, Tom Wolf, who was not able to be with us today. He did present a proclamation declaring this week Crime Victims' Rights Week in the Commonwealth. If you would like to read that proclamation in its entirety, it is available for view at our table. Every year at the conclusion of the rally, OVA hosts a post-rally session, and we invite you this year to attend our post-rally session, which will be held in room 16E. This year, we've partnered with the Pennsylvania State Police and the Sex Offender Assessment Board, Megan Dade, who's with us today, and we are going to be doing a training on this new and innovative approach that we've taken to victim notifications when there's a sexually violent predator identified. We have partnered with PSP to ensure timely and sensitive notification for these victims, and I have to say that this has been a huge undertaking. And since last year when we launched this program, we have identified from 497 victims who were previously identified in these specific cases, we now have 2,507 victims registered. And these are individuals who had never known about the services of OVA prior, and they did not know about the whereabouts of their offender. So we are really proud and excited about this partnership. If you would like to learn more about that, again, please visit our booth or join us after the rally in room 16E to learn more, and we will feed you. We have pizza. So that partnership really ties in really well with today's theme, and that is serving victims, building trust, and restoring hope. The only way that these three things can begin to happen is when we engage meaningfully and collaborative with the partners in the various justice systems. A victim cannot be served if they aren't empowered to know where to turn for services. Trust cannot be built unless the various areas of our justice system serve those victims with dignity and respect. Oftentimes, unfortunately, our system fails victims. We have laws that aren't fully inclusive. We have limits on justice that leave some victims feeling powerless and hopeless. We restore hope by believing in victims, by providing them with adequate services, by ensuring that doors are not closed in their faces when they bravely step forward, and by creating inclusive and safe spaces throughout the Commonwealth for all victims to access services and justice. So with that, it is by no mistake that we stand in the very center where much of that change can happen to ensure victims are given the justice they so deserve. Without laws that are inclusive and protective of our victims, we cannot meet any of these goals. But by changing, updating, and enacting legislation, we can restore hope. Because there's a young boy in Erie today struggling with his sexuality, and he wants to know that when he comes out, that he's not going to get thrown out of a restaurant or denied services for being with his boyfriend, that he's not going to be denied access to a job or fired or brutally beaten because of who he is. For him today, we demand passage of the Fairness for All Act to ensure protections for all LGBTQ people. This is how we serve victims. Because there's a woman in Paoli who has been repeatedly beaten and strangled by her husband, and she's about to walk into the police department with no clear physical evidence because her abuser knows just how to place the right amount of pressure on her throat to impede her breathing and leave no marks. And he knows that the police are only going to charge him with a misdemeanor at best. For her today, we demand passage of House Bill 1581 to make strangulation the crime and felony that we know it is. That way, maybe we can begin to build trust. Because there's a 72-year-old man in Altoona who has never spoken to another human being about the sexual abuse he suffered as a boy, and he's about to pick up the phone and disclose it for the first time. For him, we demand an abolishment to the statute of limitations, because if access to justice is not on the other end of that phone, it could mean his life. And because there's a wonderful lady in Pittsburgh who was robbed of her entire life savings and is now unfortunately on public assistance because the court-ordered restitution has been ignored by the offender and not enforced by the courts. For her today, we demand passage of the restitution package of bills currently sitting in the Senate Judiciary Committee. This is how we can restore hope. Believe victims. Support victims, ensure that we have funding to assist victims, and come here today and advocate for passage of these laws that will empower victims and hold the offenders accountable. These are the steps to building on the theme we have today. This is how we serve victims, it's how we build trust, and it's how we will restore hope. Thank you. I I now have the distinct pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is a wonderful advocate within the criminal justice system. Josh Shapiro currently serves as the chairman of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. PCCD is one of the primary fountains for which all funding of victim services flows through. Most recently, Josh spearheaded an effort to set aside $250,000 for victims in the most recent grand jury case. Josh is a leader who cares about victims and helps to ensure that they are served through his leadership. Thank you.
Good morning. Let's put our hands together for Jennifer Storm, working every day for us. Now, I know we've got an official name and probably some official hashtags today to use, but I'd like to propose that wherever we go today, whatever we lobby for, whatever we push for, the hashtag is Storm the Capitol. Are you with me? Let me begin by thanking the many victim advocates that I see here today. I've met many of you across Pennsylvania. I've worked with many of you as chairman of PCCD, and I want to collectively salute you for the brave and important work that you do each and every day to protect victims and look out for survivors across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you for what you do. We at PCCD are proud to partner with you. Let me also thank the chairman of our Criminal Justice Advisory Committee of PCCD, a great leader for victims in Pennsylvania, Representative Michael Verb. It is an unfortunate reality in our Commonwealth today, in our culture today, that the perpetrators of crime are the ones who grab the headlines. They're the ones who garner the attention. At PCCD, in your organizations, the DAs and others, we want to change that dynamic. True, we want punishment for those who perpetrate the crime, but we're here today to say that we will not forget the victims, that they are top of our mind, and they will never be forgotten, never. At PCCD, we never lose sight of this. We always focus on the victims. Just a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity to visit with victim service providers in the Altoona-Johnstown area. We sat in a room in the Cambria County Courthouse talking about the needs that they would have as a result of General Kane's recent grand jury report exposing the clergy sex abuse there. The horrors that so many in that community must feel. But yet, as we talked, we realized that some hope can come from that. Opportunities now that these issues were being brought forth would provide for others to speak out for the first time, to feel comfortable going and seeking help, to be able to call the hotline, the number that they'd seen many times but hadn't before had the courage to dial that number. Friends, the more we're able to be out talking about these issues, whether in Altoona, Johnstown, or anywhere in Pennsylvania, the more hope we give to survivors and the more opportunity we give to victims to get the services that they need. And those services are the focus of what we do at PCCD. Thanks to an increase in the VOCA funding of $60 million, we're able to provide more services, more help to victims than ever before in Pennsylvania. Over just the last 12 months, PCCD has awarded $50 million for victim services throughout Pennsylvania, using both federal and state funds. At PCCD, we're paying particular attention to child victims, partnering with the District Attorneys Association and many others across the Commonwealth to increase the number of child advocacy centers across Pennsylvania. Through the support of PCCD and the partnership with counties across Pennsylvania, we're now up to 28 child advocacy centers across the Commonwealth. That's 28 new places where children and families can go to get counseling, to deal with law enforcement, to get the services that they need. PCCD is also in charge of taking the resources, the dollars from the Endowment Act, from the horrors of the Sandusky situation, comes hope for so many across our Commonwealth because of the resources we can now bring to bear. $48 million now set aside for victims in Pennsylvania. So far, in just a few months, PCCD has sent out $3.5 million all across Pennsylvania for victims who can't speak English, who needed bilingual services, for victims who needed counseling, for victims who needed a helping hand. From those horrors can come some hope. From those horrors can come some good. Lastly, I just want to touch on PCCD's Victims' Compensation Fund. You know, we don't take tax dollars for that. We take it out of the hides of criminals here in Pennsylvania in that Victims' Compensation Fund. And in 2015, more than 10,000 victims of crime were able to file claims and get over $12.5 million of benefits to meet their needs. That's the work of PCCD. So friends, today, as we gather, our collective being brings about some collective strength and ultimately the collective will to do something, to pass Representative Rozzi's bill that needs to be passed, to help, by our very presence here today, have someone who sees this on the internet or on TV at home or whatever the case may be, finally seek the help that they need. Finally go to the police officer and say, this is what happened to me. Finally visit with their district attorney and say, you need to do something about this. So today we come out of the shadows, don't we? Today we stand up for hope. Today we show our strength. Today we never forget. Today we never forget. And today we join with one collective voice and say we are for the victims, we are for the survivors, and we are one. Thank you very much. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Ms. Susan Curley Grady. Ms. Susan Curley Grady is the sister of homicide victim Robert Curley. She was born and raised in Plains, Pennsylvania, just outside of Wilkes-Barre. She now resides in Bethlehem with her husband, Glenn. Susan's younger brother was murdered in 1991, and since she has been an activist for justice. Susan is a board member of several victim groups in Luzerne and Lehigh County. She worked with the Office of the Victim Advocate to form an advisory group to make a change in the parole process. Victims and survivors need to be heard as well. In 2013, House Bill 492 was signed into law. This bill allows victims the opportunity to meet face-to-face with the parole board members. Susan received the Governor's Survivor Activist Award on June 5, 2014 for her dedication and persistence for justice. Ms. Susan Curley Grady.
Hello, everyone. My name is Susan Curley Grady, and I am the sister of homicide victim Robert Curley. This is my husband, Glenn, and he is proud to hold my brother's picture since he has never even met my brother. Bobby was the youngest of 4 children. He was a person so full of life and had so much to live for. He was a happy person, and he loved his work as an electrician, and he loved to help people, especially the elderly. He loved to have fun. He enjoyed his family, boating, fishing, traveling, listening to country music, and just living. Then one day, all this changed. He met a girl by the name of Joanne Chopak and supposedly fell in love. This was the beginning of the end. They married in August of 1990, and soon after, Bobby became a victim of homicide. Joanne began to poison Bobby just 6 weeks after they were married. She put old rat poison in his iced tea that he drank every day and took to work. She told the police how she put the poison in baggies and kept it under the sink. As she made iced tea, she would mix the poison in and keep it in the refrigerator, not even thinking that her 4-year-old daughter could open the refrigerator door and take some tea. She slowly poisoned Bobby for almost a year. She kept giving him dose after dose and watched him slowly die. Yes, she was torturing him. There were times when Bobby was in such agony, and yet she just watched him suffer while she was filled with joy because her plan was working. The doctors were puzzled and really had no idea what to do for Bobby. They didn't know what they were treating or what they were dealing with. He would get a little bit better, but then he would get sick again. This went on for months. Then his condition continuously got worse. He told me that he felt like he was on fire from the inside out. You know, when your arm or leg falls asleep and you get that tingling feeling? Well, imagine that 100 times worse. It was so unbearable that you could not even touch Bobby. It even hurt him to have a bed sheet lay against his body. His hair was falling out in clumps, and he was starting to get delusional. Bobby was fading away before our eyes, and no one could do anything to help him. After a few weeks, the doctors realized that Bobby was suffering from a poison, but they had no idea what poison, so they could not even treat him. Joanne was getting tired of this. So on a Sunday afternoon in September of 1991, Joanne waited until the family left Bobby for the night, and then her plan got worse. She told the police how she got a drink from the vending machine. She took it into Bobby's room, mixed the poison in, and made him drink it, and threw the cup in the trash bin and went home and never thought twice about what she had just did. Bobby took a turn for the worse that night and went into a coma. The doctors still ran tests, and a few days later, we were advised that he was suffering from thallium poison. We had never even heard of this poison and had no clue where Bobby would have ingested it. By this time, Bobby had so much in him that even the doctors said it was irreversible, and there was no cure for this poison. That meant that my brother Bobby was going to die. Bobby was declared brain dead on Thursday, September 26th. The doctors approached his wife and said that a decision needed to be made about life support. Without a hesitation, Joanne chose the day and time that my brother would die. She chose to stop life support the very next day. My family and I were devastated, and there was nothing we could do. We felt helpless, that the only thing we could do was pray. We spent the next day with Bobby, and then we said our goodbyes. We cried and held each other as we left the room, but Joanne stayed in the room and watched as they disconnected him from the life support and he took his last breath. She came into the waiting area where we were. She raised her hands and she yelled, "He's dead." She was relieved that Bobby was finally dead. Friday, September 27th, 1991, my brother, Bobby Curley, died at 6:30 p.m. at the age of 32. A few days later, Bobby was buried, and then the ordeal began. Since it was a poison, we knew something was wrong. How did Bobby ingest this? Where did it come from? The police became involved, and a task force was formed. They were very reluctant to talk to me or my family. They would only keep in touch with her, Joanne, my brother's wife. Joanne continued, even after all this, to come to my mother's house and even sit down and have dinner with us. We had no clue what was going on, but I'm sure that she was laughing on the inside because she was getting away with murder. 2 weeks passed, and still we had no information. The police nor the district attorney would even talk to us, only the wife. This did not sit well with me or my family. We had a feeling that we had to do something. And the police were not telling us what was going on. So I went to see an attorney, and he did have some communication with the district attorney. Each time that I contacted the police or the DA, they would cringe when they heard my name. All they would say is that they are doing everything they can, but there are no answers. They were going on a probability that this was a prank gone wrong. Bobby worked as an electrician at a local college, and they were getting a chemistry lab ready for the students for the beginning of school. Several bottles of thallium were found in the lab. This scenario just happened to fall into Joanne's favor because now coworkers were prime suspects. The suspicion was not geared towards her. Well, 2 years have gone by, and still no answers. The police said they did everything they could, but I knew that wasn't so. It was declared a murder, and someone needed to be held responsible. Finally, the district attorney agreed to form a second task force. And finally, someone would talk to me and my family. They realized how emotional this was for us, and they began to show some care and concern for us. They started first with an exhumation of Bobby, and then all kinds of tests were performed. The police were finally getting some progress, so a process of elimination was set up. There were 25 suspects, including myself, my mother, and my brother. We had to prove our whereabouts for an entire year. Do you have any idea how this made us feel? After more than 2 years, everyone was eliminated except one suspect, Joanne Curley. On December 12, 1996, 5 years after Bobby died, Joanne was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. She continued to claim her innocence through all the pretrial hearings. Then right before a trial, she offered a plea bargain of third-degree murder for the admission of guilty to the murder of my brother. Knowing that Joanne killed Bobby was extremely hard to digest, and our options were not favorable. The defense was going for reasonable doubt. And since I was at the hospital every day, all that was needed was one juror to think that I could have done this horrible crime to my brother, and she would walk free. This would devastate us because we knew for sure that she killed Bobby. We decided to accept the third-degree murder plea, which carried a sentence of 10 to 20 years because the crime was committed in 1991. That was the sentence at that time. Now for third degree, it's 20 to 40. There were also other reasons that we accepted this plea. We did not want our mother to have to go through a trial since she had already gone through so much pain and heartache of losing a child. Also, when the probability of a prank was suggested, there were 2 co-workers who were accused of doing this, and we felt we needed to clear their names. We could not take a chance that she could walk free and not pay for this horrific crime. In return for accepting the plea bargain, Joanne publicly announced her guilt before a judge and said that she did it for greed. She wanted his insurance money. She admitted to putting rat poison in his drinks and even giving him the last dose while he lay dying in his hospital bed. 10 to 20 years sentence is certainly not enough for torturing and killing someone. She has been denied parole 8 times, and her full sentence will be up this year. That means as of December 12th, 2016, she will be free. My brother Bobby will never be free, nor will I, nor my family. Only she will be free. Our mother passed away last year, so she is free of her heartache, and she is now reunited with her son. Knowing that Joanne Curley intentionally killed Bobby and never once showed any sign of remorse, she will begin to lead her new life at the age of 52. I pray that she will never harm another person again, but she is vindictive, and yes, she did get away with murder. All the different organizations, the OVA in Harrisburg, the VRC in Wilkes-Barre, and the CVC in Allentown, have all helped my family deal with this awful tragedy. Also, with the help of our legislators, especially in our case, Senator Lisa Baker, we are trying to restore our trust and build our hope that justice will be to all victims. Nothing can bring back our loved ones or take away our hurt, but knowing that if you commit a crime, you will pay the time. Thank you for letting me tell you about my brother, Bobby Curley.
Thank you, Susan. It is now my pleasure to introduce Representative Mark Rossi. PA State Representative Mark Rossi was elected into office in November 2012. Representative Rossi is a lifelong resident of the 126th Legislative District in Berks County. Rossi is the face of statutes of limitation reform in Pennsylvania. As a victim of rape at the hands of a priest, his experience motivated him to run for his legislative seat in order to make a difference in Harrisburg. Rossi was named by Protect Pennsylvania Kids as the House Pennsylvania Kid Protector recipient for his legislative efforts to better protect Pennsylvania's children. Representative Mark Rossi.
Before I start with my prepared remarks, I have to say this. I was here 4 years ago to the date at another victims rally, and my good friend was with me that day, Joseph Behe, and if he doesn't come up here with me, I probably don't come up here that day, and I probably don't even think about running for the legislature. Unfortunately, last Good Friday, the pain was too great for him. He was also sexually abused by the same priest I was, and he had to take his own life to ease the pain. That was 4 years ago to the date. It's somewhat ironic that today we have a chance to put an amendment into the bill that will give victims justice, and I hope we get that accomplished today. I would like to thank the Crime Victims Alliance for inviting me to participate in the 24th Annual Crime Victims Rally today. Imagine 24 years of victim cutouts and puzzle pieces to try and demonstrate the devastation. 24 years of fighting to have our voices heard, justice sought, and needs met. When a person is a victim of a crime, no matter how old, our world is forever changed. Like us, those we know and love are stunned with guilt, anger, helplessness, and we don't know where to turn. We are victimized multiple times in the process of seeking justice. If we're lucky enough to get to court and get a conviction and be eligible for restitution for the harm we suffered, still, nothing can ever remove the scar. Can you imagine how any crime victim survives their trauma without the care and support of local victim witness programs, victim outreach services, rape crisis centers, resource centers, sexual assault counseling centers, and shelters? My fight is born of personal experience. I was groomed and raped by a priest, Father Edward Graff. Like so many, I hid my shame, embarrassment, guilt, and I tried to put it behind me. But when a childhood friend, also abused by the same priest, commits suicide, my second childhood friend, I had to speak up. I was 38. Only then did I realize that as a 13-year-old boy, I had 5 years to pursue a criminal case and 2 years to pursue a civil case. 13 years old. That's ridiculous. Archaic statutes of limitations protected this man of the cloth who we estimate sexually abused upwards of 200 children as he was moved from parish to parish, the parish, the parish, over 10 parishes. I've come to know and have the greatest respect for the people and organizations here today, which provide the lifeline for advocates and victims. Thanks to Jennifer Storm, our victim advocate, Delilah Rumberg, Kristen Hauser, and the entire team at PCAR, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, Kristen Woolley of Turning Point, John Salveson and Tammy Lerner, and so many others at Children's Alliance Center of Berks County. Today, to honor all victims of sexual assault and those who support them, I will speak to my resolution designating this month of April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This year's, thank you. This year's campaign focuses on campus sexual violence protection. My daughter, McKenna, will be a freshman this fall, and like so many parents, I want to know that she will be safe. And today, for the first time in more than a dozen years, a statute, a limitation bill is on the House calendar for a vote. House Bill 1947 will protect children moving forward, but it does nothing for adult victims that have lost their rights to have their voices heard in a court of law. But today, I intend to do something about that, and that's going to happen this afternoon when we have an opportunity to put my amendment into that bill. And believe me, I am calling on all my colleagues to support this measure. Every single one of them. They have a choice to make. They can stand with victims or they can stand with perpetrators. And we will know when they put that vote up where they stand. I invite everyone here to the gallery to witness the debate. You will know, like I said, where my colleagues stand, and if they truly value the children of this Commonwealth, past, present, and future. With your continued support, we will put hidden predators and organizations that shield them on notice that they will be held accountable. We, the people of Pennsylvania, of this great Commonwealth, we say no more.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce the Honorable David J. Arnold, Jr. Dave Arnold currently serves as the elected District Attorney of Lebanon County. He is in his third term, having first elected in 2006. Mr. Arnold is currently the president of the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association and is a member of the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association Executive Committee. Prior to his election of District Attorney, Mr. Arnold spent time as an assistant district attorney in Lebanon County District Attorney's Office. He then worked 4 years in private practice handling civil litigation. Honorable David J. Arnold.
Good morning. First, I do want to thank you for allowing me to be part of this program this morning. It's a tremendous honor to be here on behalf of the District Attorneys of Pennsylvania and to be here with Crime Victims Alliance of Pennsylvania. We are here to celebrate National Crime Victims' Rights Week. And as you've already heard, the emphasis on restoring trust and building hope with our victims. I can tell you that for prosecutors around Pennsylvania, serving victims is by far one of our most important functions. We serve victims by establishing trust with victims, trust that they know the system will treat them fairly. We serve victims by building hope with victims. Right? Not hope that we can turn back the tragedy that's happened in their family, but hope that they can simply move forward in a positive fashion with the rest of their life and get past what's happened to them in their family. And we serve victims by reaching out to victims who may not have the ability to seek out services on their own, to ensure that all victims have access and the ability for their voices to be heard. I want to share a little bit of a personal story with you from my time as district attorney. I have this little stone here, and this little stone has sat on my desk now in my office for about the last 7 or 8 years. And this stone reminds me daily of why I do my job. This stone belonged to a woman who was murder victim. And the family tells me this was a very important stone to her, that she considered it a source of strength for herself. And we had a difficult case to prove, and we fought the fight, we won the battle, we convicted the defendant of murder. He's now going to spend the rest of his life in jail. And the sister of the victim, afterwards, she had kept this rock for herself as kind of a source of strength for her after the murder of the victim. And she gave me this rock, and she asked me to consider this rock a reminder of the victim, and also to use this rock as a source of strength for myself when we have tough cases, that we have to fight the difficult fights and try to go ahead when we don't know what the outcome is going to be. See, the sister, she trusted me, and she said that our office fighting for the victim gave her faith in the system. She knew we could have easily pled that case out and not gotten the justice that their family had sought. But as I said, when it was difficult, we fought the fight and won for that family. We gave her hope, again, not to undo what had happened to their family, not to undo the tragedy that befell her sister, but just the hope that she can get up the next day and move on with her life, knowing that somebody out there cares enough to fight for them and to fight for her sister. And that's why this rock, this little rock, as strange as that might sound to you, sits on my desk and reminds me every single day of why I do my job and why prosecutors do their jobs around Pennsylvania, to serve victims. There's a prominent philosopher, American philosopher, who coined the phrase, act as if what you do makes a difference, because it does. What all the advocacy groups out here do, what all the victims' rights groups do, act as if it makes a difference, because it does. It makes a difference to every single one of us in here. And we have to remember that each of us can make a huge difference in the lives of victims if we remember that what we're doing is important and that what we're doing does in fact make a difference. Our office made a difference for that particular victim that I mentioned. Couldn't bring back her sister. We gained her trust, we gave her hope, and we gave her the confidence to know that there are people willing to fight for her family and for her sister. It is critical that we all serve victims by working together to create partnerships such as we've seen here this morning, to engage policymakers. We've got great representatives like Representative Rozzi up here with a chance to do tremendous things for us, and continue to raise awareness of victims' issues. We need to continue to make sure that victims can trust the system. We must continue to make sure we provide those victims with hope that we can achieve justice for them, because we all play a role in serving victims, building trust, and restoring hope. Thank you.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Angela Quarles. Ms. Quarles is a supervisor with Dauphin County Children and Youth. She is a member of K-KIT and also a mother of 3. Her interests include bargain shopping, cooking, learning, and helping young people figure out next steps in their journey through life. Angela is committed to the memory of her late goddaughter, Trina Fields Price, and educating about the sometimes silent killer, domestic violence. Ms. Angela Quarles.
Good morning. I stand before you today, believe it or not, still in disbelief that I have to stand here and tell my story. Trina Fields Price was my goddaughter. beautiful mother of 3 children, a loving daughter and goddaughter, a teacher of so many children in the Harrisburg area. She loved everyone. Her smile just lit up the entire room when she walked in. And in December of 2011, her husband of 6 years, the father to her 2 youngest children, he not only murdered her, he hid in the house that night until the children were put to sleep by her. He waited until she got off the phone with her best friend and was going to sleep. He then went into her room. He stabbed her 23 times while his children lay in the room right next to her. Now, Tarina, one word that I didn't use when I described her as strength, Tarina was the strongest person. Despite being stabbed 23 times, she managed to run down the steps, out the front door. She collapsed on the landing off of her porch. But yet she still didn't give up. She started crawling until she landed in the middle of the street where she lied crying for help. Her husband, the father to her children, her murderer, stood over her as she lied there crying no and shot her in her eye. It's almost like it just happened last night. Although it's been years, it feels like days. And the moments following that, the hours following that, the person that was by my side, besides my family, was Jennifer Storm. She was there for me to hold my hand at the hospital. Her and her staff were there to get us through those moments, those days, those weeks, those months, and still to this day, the years following this horrific crime. It's because of her and the staff at victim service agencies that we are able to get through this. It doesn't go away. It stays fresh in our minds and our hearts. And we stand before you today to raise awareness, to keep the memory alive of our loved ones. I stand before you today for Tarina's boys as they grow in love. Today's theme is serving victims, building trust, and restoring hope. Those are the words of the day and are the actions that give us strength to make it another day. I'm going to break the theme down for you just a little bit, so please bear with me. Serving. To follow is to serve. To be available is to serve. To believe is to serve. To accompany is to serve. To forgive and to be compassionate is to serve. This is what our dedicated victim service agencies, our DAs, our law enforcement officers, our leaders at the Capitol and on the Hill, this is what they do for victims. Yes, they do it because it's their job, but let's be honest, they also do it because of the priceless impact their work has on the community, the victims, and the families. Building. To make something by putting pieces together, to develop something gradually, to increase the amount of something, to eventually regain trust. Restoring, to bring back, to reinstate, to return to a previous condition, state of mind, feeling of safety, having hope. This is a poem from the voice of my Tarina and from the voice of her children, and everyone that knew and loved her, and for every life that she touched, returning faith. You took away her innocence, her hopes, her dreams, her future. You took from her her very soul, but what could have been, she will never know. Your words would cut her deep inside, deep to the very core. Darkness, cold, she could not feel. Why did you hurt her so? You crushed her as she screamed in pain. Your words ripped out her heart. The world grew dull. She felt insane. Did you ever care about that part? Is that what you wanted all along? I win, you lose, a game? Control, submission, guilt, defeat. Yet still, her spirit remains. She will live in spite of you. You no longer have a say. Her spirit, her body, her mind, her soul, you will never again have control. Whether in this world or in the next, justice will have a way. You hurt her and you almost won, but you lost, I have to say. A new dawn breaks of hope and peace, of happiness and grace. From us, these things you cannot take. Our heads held high, we walk by faith. As we part today, let us embrace this year's theme and always remember the value in serving victims, building trust, and restoring hope by loving and supporting each other through the pain. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. It is now my pleasure to introduce our last speaker, Ms. Carla Christopher. Ms. Christopher is a dynamic social justice-oriented poet activist who absolutely believes that creative expression can rebirth a community, empower a population, and change the world. Carla received the 2014 Arts and Cultural Community Liaison for the City of York. She is also the author of 4 collections of poetry and 2 children's books. Carla has won numerous awards for her poetry. Ms. Carla Christopher.
I was already York's Poet Laureate. I already had worked for the mayor's office. I'd already spoken in campuses, colleges, schools, led workshops for years before I told anyone that I was also a survivor of domestic violence and sexual assault. That it wasn't just other people's stories, I was helping them tell that it was my own. And it was when I began sharing that this was indeed my story, that the last person anyone would have thought could be the victim of such a crime, that everyone began to come to me in the quiet moments after a lecture, in the back of the room after a board meeting, that politicians, officials, leaders, as well as mothers, bakers, cab drivers began telling me this same story over and over again. And each one of those victims had felt the same way I did, that they were in some way alone, that they were the only person who truly had been through what they had been through, that if they revealed their weakness or their victimization, that they would somehow be blamed and be judged. And so they had stayed silent until someone else was willing to speak up first. And that is why I believe with all my heart that the work we do today is important, not just because of the people in this room, but because of the thousands of people who will read about this, who will see these images, who will know that there is a whole room full of people who will support them and tell them that it is okay to share their story as well. And that is why the story I'm sharing today isn't mine. It was written by high school students, students that I taught, students that gave me permission, although they themselves are studying for APs, to use their words today. So I have to acknowledge them and to let you know that everything that I'm about to read today is true and is from the words of students that are currently trying to build a safe identity for themselves in a world like the one that we live in.
I think sexual assault means if someone touches another person in a sexual way without their permission, against their will. Unwanted touching of someone's body without their consent or unwanted comments.
They know. I promise you, they know. Their heads beneath pillows, their shoulders pressed up against doors. They sat on floors, curled in positions of the baby they once were, but cradling a telephone against their ear. It was their best friend. It was this girl in their class talking about how she could hear her aunt and uncle from the top of the basement stairs when they thought everyone else was sleeping, but who could close their eyes against all that screaming. It was the volume loud enough to cause cave-ins in the places where sound enters the ear. Yes, if they can't hear your voice, movies and television really do play that loud, and they've been listening to the echoing of our silence. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted just while in college. The majority of these victims never report the assault. In fact, over 90% of sexual assault victims on college campuses do not report the assault, believing they will not be heard, not be believed, not be vindicated, that they will be humiliated, shamed, rejected, and stigmatized. Our next generation is learning a code of silence.
I mean, yeah, it's an issue for everybody, but mostly for teens and college students. They have to deal with it in a relationship. With boys or girls, they think it's okay to touch you in your personal space. And you tell them to stop, but they're like, no, it's okay. Why are you being a tease? The more you tell people they can't or shouldn't do something, they're gonna wanna do it even more. So I don't know if there's anything we can do to stop it, but it should be stopped.
When everything is so different? Where is the other shoe, and what does it fit? Can't I just be barefoot and feel the earth move under my feet, even when the sky tumbles down? I know the ways of my guardians are unsound and that laws are changing daily, but I still see love regulated and women's wages in chains, with change being blocked out, vote after vote. It's on Facebook. Of course I see it. I can read a meme, and I'm a lot more passionate than you think. I know I'm afraid of this future where passion is outpaced by technology, and it's like there's an error message. I mean, how could he think that was okay? And how could she say that to him? But that's just the way of people today, so maybe it's better if I just shut myself down and drift off into mental space. Our next generation is learning a code of mistrust.
My father used to touch me for a few years once I started blossoming, until I told him to stop and told my mom. My stepdad throwing a TV and beating my mom every night. That was like violence, right? Sexual violence? Because he was her husband, so she thought she had to take it. My aunt's husband used to try and touch my private parts and sometimes tried to convince me to have sex with him. I always said no, and until this day, my family doesn't know and will never know.
Every morning, I put on the armor of God because I need the combat fatigues of a woman warrior, wounded but never resting, attesting to the power that comes from helping another. Hand extended to pull you up makes me push my feet in harder. Little brothers and sisters, I got you. I love you. And I know that you are the generation taking the lead that will pull us through the darkness of ignorance into the light of this coming together of passion and power and purpose. My next generation, I promise you, you can do this.
I think we should give sexual assaulting a more negative connotation. I think we should make the punishment a lot harsher. I think they should be taught better, even though it doesn't seem to work. I would say that we can teach people more about themselves and self-defense instead of other stupid stuff we teach. We can raise our children with more respect, like about what they used to do in the past. Show them they are not alone, not the cause, and what to do to fix it, that it's safe to speak up, provide a safe environment, support groups and rallies and stuff.
Oh, and always support the victims. You know what? We can just be there for the victims. We should make sure that we're there for the people that go through this. You know, people still blame the victim, but we can believe them, especially if they knew him. They want to say it's her fault, but it wasn't. We could just let someone know it's not their fault. We could just let them know that it's not their fault. What if we just told them that it's not their fault? We can just be someone there. We can help them. We can give the victim the opportunity to tell what they feel. I think those things really help. Our undaunted, our powerful, our irrepressible next generation is finally learning a code of hope.
Thank you, Carla and Lexi. This will conclude our rally. Thank you all for attending this special event in order to celebrate victims and the advocates who work with them. Please make sure you take a minute to stop by and visit the tables surrounding the rotunda. Thank you.